I want to talk about not neglecting mindfulness. And we talked about that before. It's one of the Dogen Zenji's 8 awarenesses of adults in the Dharma, or spiritual adults, 8 awarenesses of great beings. And I wanted to go into that just a little bit more today, not neglecting mindfulness. Let me find the passage and I'll read it. In the Shobogenzo. So as you might remember, this is Dogen Zenji's, the last teachings that he gave before he died. And we've been digging into those during the last few weeks. The fifth awakening. The fifth awakening is not neglecting mindfulness. It's also called maintaining right mindfulness. This helps you to guard the Dharma so you won't lose it. It is called to maintain right mindfulness, or not to neglect mindfulness. The Buddha said, monks, for seeking a good teacher and good protection, there is nothing like not neglecting mindfulness. If you practice this, robbers of desire cannot enter you. Therefore, you should always maintain mindfulness in yourself. If you lose it, you will lose all merits. When your mindfulness is solid, you will not be harmed, even if you go into the midst of the robbers of the 5 sense desires. Even if you go into the midst of the robbers of the 5 sense desires. It is like wearing armor and going into a battlefield, so there's nothing to be afraid of. It is called not to neglect mindfulness. Not neglecting mindfulness is a really big deal. And sometimes we can make this into a thing that we kind of get, like an app that we can press your button on and play, and that's mindfulness, or something we do for a few minutes and then we let it go. That's mindfulness. Or you can have this, lately we have this sort of a commercialization around mindfulness. We can learn to eat mindfully, or drive mindfully, or mindfully argue, or mindfully, I don't know, can't even find all the things. Mindfully do everything, we'll say it that way. Mindfully parent, mindfully die, and all of these are useful ways for engaging with our life, and parsing them out like that can really separate us from our life. So mindfulness is, in other words, paying attention, really paying attention. And paying attention instructs us in every single thing that we do. And if we can learn to truly pay attention, to really let go of me, the me that's in the middle of that, then our life becomes so big and so full of ease, without the tiny little pinpoints of distractions that come up. I was thinking of this as I was driving. Yesterday, I had a long drive, and I haven't done a long drive in a while. And when we drive every day, you get into a rhythm, and driving becomes more and more comfortable, especially if you get to know the road really well. And then you're like, okay, I can listen to some podcasts. That's going to be great. And then what am I going to do today? Well, today I want to talk to my mom. And then I'm going to listen to a podcast, but I really like that podcast. And oh, there's this really nice stretch of road where I really like to see the river. So I'm going to turn, I'd like to talk to my mom. And then the signal usually drops just before the river. So if I could end that conversation and then I could have a look. And then I think I still have time to fit in the second half of that pot. That's sort of how it goes. So you can hear in this situation that I'm talking about myself, because we all fall into this. So yesterday I was driving and really getting the feeling as I was moving of being one in a sea of fishes. And if you've watched fish swimming, as I know we all have, at least on, TV, but we've probably also seen it live at some point. Maybe we've gone diving or snorkeling, or maybe we've seen it from above, looking down into the water, or even in a fish tank. You can see it if there are enough fish. And it's this really wonderful thing of all the fish moving as individuals, but together. And the fish are one body, right? And you've probably seen this with birds as well. If you see a whole lot of birds together, then they make something called a murmuration. It's beautiful, enchanting dance. And to do that, we have to join into the sea of fishes swimming up the road. We have to pay attention in a very precise way. We have to pay attention exactly to ourselves and how we are in the world at the same time that we pay attention to everything else around us. Somebody was once telling me their driving instructor taught them to look for grenades in the road. And what that means is, they would be driving and the instructor would say, grenade. And the grenade was somebody pulling out into the road up ahead, driving, and they would say, grenade. And they would have to recognize, what is it? Oh my goodness, what is it going to be? And, maybe it would be the car ahead of them was wavering. And as much as I appreciate that sentiment, grenades are not the way I would like to think of it. I would like to think of it in a different way. Care, maybe, paying attention. So my driving instructor, Mrs. Turner, we called her Miss T, she had a different way of instructing. And her way was to watch out for others. So she had certain rules that she taught us, and her rules were very strongly enforced, I'll say. I remember the first day of driver's ed. I remember the room. It was in the summer. I must have been 16 or something like that. And she said, what is the most important rule of driving? And I'm not going to imitate her right now, but she had a particular way of speaking. What is the most important rule of driving? And we all, we're like, stop at the stop sign, don't speed. We had ideas. And finally, she's like, no, most important thing is don't y'all ever go ahead of no old person ever. So she had reasons for that. First of all, from my perspective, there's a simple reason of respect. Second, there's a simple reason of reflexes. You know, the confluence of a bunch of teenagers and a bunch of elderly people is a bad mix, because teenagers, of course, were not experienced drivers and tend to be impulsive. And elderly people's reaction time is not as fast. So out of respect, we can let others go first. Her other reasons were, you know, I think she said, you could sit there, and she instructed us to wait. She said, I don't care how long you wait. She's like, I don't care how long you sit there. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you can count 1001, 1002, 1003. Because as soon as you give up and you say, all right, I'm going to go now, I'm going first, they'll be like, boom, they hit you, you're dead. So that was her instruction. And I think of that in terms of not neglecting mindfulness. We have to have a spaciousness about it that includes others, not this rigidity of me, me, me. I'm going to be mindful, and I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to follow my breath, and I'm going to notice my thoughts. And doing that, I'm going to do it right. So when we get into that rigidity and we lose the peripheral vision, that's when, boom, we intersect with somebody in an unskillful way. Maybe we hurt someone, you know, hurt their feelings or hurt them physically. Maybe we hurt ourselves by just being too uptight. Whatever it is, losing the spaciousness of not neglecting mindfulness is, in fact, neglecting mindfulness. There was a story in the news this week that somebody was telling me about that really shook them up. So I think it happened in Maryland, as I recall, and people were driving, and there was a place where they were driving where the fast lane was right next to a concrete barrier, and on the other side of the concrete barrier were workers. So here's the fast lane, and I think there were at least 3 lanes, you know, fast lane, middle lane, slow lane, so-called slow lane, but of course they're all fast. And something happened where the car way over here shifted lanes very quickly, boom, and then wanted to get into this fast lane. And in changing the lanes, hit the tip of this car behind them, boom, glanced off of it. This car wavered, this car veered over at the exact moment that there was a hole in the barriers protecting the workers. And just like that, 5 workers died. The person telling me this story couldn't tell it to me without crying. And in retelling it, both remembering their emotions and now feeling my own emotions in this moment, I also feel like crying. They remembered their names. I don't remember all the names. I remember 2 brothers. I think one's name was Jose and the other one was Juan. And then they told me there were 2 brothers who died right at once. And in that group of 5 were another 2 brothers 2 sets of brothers died at once, plus 1 more person, just like that. Did the person driving intend to kill 2 sets of brothers and 1 more person? Probably not. Nevertheless, at that moment, the lack of attention led to the causes and conditions that caused that to happen. This is how important it is to maintain mindfulness. Even knowing that were we to do it, constantly, all the time, these things will still happen. And when we keep our attention clear, not just on ourselves, but in a spacious way, and flow as one of the fishes moving through the world in harmony. This is how harmony can happen. And when we reach that flow and enter into it, it's such a relief. It feels like such a relief. Not to be special, not to be somebody who goes the fastest, but just to join in the flow of the universe. The flow of the entire universe starts to carry us along. And we don't have to work so hard all by ourselves. We can start to trust in the flow of the universe to help us, to be with us. And we can be a part of it, not outside of it. And again, when that happens, it's such a relief. There's been a saying since olden times, no one except a fish knows a fish's heart. No one except a bird follows a bird's trace. And then Dogen Zenji goes on to say, yet those who understand this point are rare. To think that no person knows a fish's heart or a bird's trace is mistaken. Know that fish always know one another's heart, unlike people who do not know one another's heart. When the fish try to go up through the dragon gate, they know one another's intention and have the same heart. Or they share the heart of breaking through the 9 great bends. Those who are not fish hardly know this. Fish know the hearts of another fish. This is to be one together as a school of fish, to really feel each other, to flow. And then he goes on to birds. When a bird flies in the sky, beasts do not even dream of finding or following its trace. As they do not know that there is no such thing. They cannot even imagine this. When birds fly in the sky, beasts do not even dream of finding or following its trace. As they do not know that there's no such thing, they can't even imagine it. However, a bird can see traces of hundreds and thousands of small birds having passed in flocks, or traces of so many lines of large birds having flown south or north. Those traces may be even more evident than the carriage tracks left on a road. or the hoof prints of a horse seen in the grass. In this way, a bird sees birds' traces. The birds are being mindful, in other words, in the way particular to birds, paying attention to where they're going and seeing clearly the traces of the other birds flying. Dogen Zenji goes on, Buddhas are like this. Buddhas are like this. You may wonder how many lifetimes Buddhas have been practicing. Buddhas, large or small, although they are countless, all know their own traces. Buddhas all know their own traces. You never know a Buddha's trace when you're not a Buddha. You may wonder why you don't know it. The reason is that while Buddhas see the traces with the Buddha's eye, those who are not Buddhas do not have the Buddha's eye. They merely notice the Buddha's attributes. They merely notice the Buddha's attributes. All who do not know this should search out the trace of the Buddha's path. If you find footprints, you should investigate whether they are the Buddha's. Upon investigation, the Buddha's trace is known. And whether it's long or short, shallow or deep is also known. To illuminate your trace is accomplished by studying the Buddha's trace. Accomplishing this is Buddha Dharma. Those who are not Buddhas do not have the Buddha's eye. They merely notice the Buddha's attributes. How often do we do this in trying to live our lives on the Bodhisattva path as Buddhas? We lose the path. We lose our own knowledge of the traces that Buddhas leave. And instead we start looking at attributes. Oh, that's nice. Oh, I really like this. That person did this. I want to do that too. Oh, I remember that time when I did this in my practice, and that was really good. And I like this teacher's way of doing this particular thing. That's something I want to get. We lose sight of the traces of Buddhas and instead focus on attributes. When we do this, it pulls us out. It pulls us out of the flow of the Buddhas, which is similar to the school of fish or the flock of birds. All moving as one body, noticing the traces that may not be visible to the naked eye. This is mindfulness as well, paying attention. The more we pay attention, the more we feel each other, truly understand each other, sense each other, know that our friend isn't feeling just right, not because of anything they've told us, but because with me out of the way, that is my ego, the idea that I'm separate from you, with that dissolved, of course I notice you more. because we are connected. We are interconnected. And it extends beyond me and you. It extends to the entire universe, to the trees, to the sky, to the earth, to the birds, to every single car filled with every single human on the entire road as one flow of the universe. And when we truly enter that flow, and we're truly paying attention and letting go of the idea of an individual me, there's such an ease in the flow. We don't have to work so hard. This is what mindfulness offers us as well. When we stop working so hard and really pay attention, there's really nothing we can't do. We become vast and spacious and free. When we're truly paying attention, the roads are such a good place to notice this, because often, the roads are also the place where our afflictive emotions come up, right? Our anger, our desires, greed. Just plain ignorance. When we're truly paying attention and not so focused on me and not so focused on the attributes of my drive that are going to make it meaningful, I think, then we can take in everything. We can take in the river and the nuances of the river. We can take in the trees. We can take in the other cars and the people in the other cars with all of their beauty and worries and sadnesses and anger. We can also take in the workers, the brothers who have families, and we care for them. We can't help but to care for them. We can't help but to care for them so deeply that when we lose one of them due to a lack of mindfulness, it breaks our heart. When somebody is hurt, it breaks our heart. This is how deeply we care for the entire universe when we're really finding our way into the flow, the traces of Buddhas, the traces of Buddhas. When we're really becoming those traces ourselves, then we see these traces everywhere. This morning, I woke up thinking of this poem by Walt Whitman, Songs of the Open Road, and this one line from it. The fifth stanza. From this hour, I ordain myself loosed of limits and imaginary lines, going where I list, my own master, total and absolute, listening to others and considering well what they say, pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great drafts of space. The east and the west are mine. The north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. All seems beautiful to me. I can repeat over to men and to women, you have done so much good to me. I would do the same to you. I will recruit for myself and you as I go. I will scatter myself among men and women as I go. I will toss the new gladness and roughness among them. Whoever denies me, it shall not trouble me. Whoever accepts me, he or she shall be blessed and shall bless me. This is true mindfulness, joining the traces of the Buddhas. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness.